Oh, I just heard. I heard that. But usually I hear it through my computer. There's something off here.
No, bro, you would hear it through your earphone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heard it. Just okay. Well, whether they're on or not, we're going to start singing.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, yeah, we didn't test the, and we didn't test. Is that necessary? Because it's always working. You want to test with your, I think it's coming from over here. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare 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 Rama
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Mo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ah. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jai 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 Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's all say Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
yeah.
So they can hear on the, you tested it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Oops. Well, it's not, the thing is still there on the right. I'll click here. Oops. It's weird. Oh, this is on, it's a different, it's on the editing mode. Might have to, yeah, oh, there you go. But it's, and we can just, here, let me just, oh, okay, that's fine. Okay. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome back to our Founder Acharya Essential Series. This is the first lesson of Prayojana to deepen our love for Srila Prabhupada. And lesson 8 in this section is called To Love is to Cooperate. And there we see a famous picture. Rath Yatra 1974, San Francisco. And to get this shot, my dear beloved God sister Vishaka Devi had to stand out in a field away from the devotees. She tells a really funny story of how she got this shot. She had permission from the BBT to climb on the cart, to be up there with all the guys. You see all the guys there, right? It's all guys. And, but because she was the only girl, and the guys didn't want any girls up there, they wouldn't let her up. So she, even though she had, but I have a permission from the BBT to get a shot, for this, and but they wouldn't let her up. So she just shrugged her shoulders, resigned herself to her fate, and then she walked away from the cart. The cart at this point is stopped because Prabhupada is, if you've seen the movie of this, he's in, as we say, too much ecstasy, and he's raising his arms and jumping, and So Vishaka, she just walked away. She was she was disappointed, maybe even a little disgusted at the reaction of her godbrothers. Walked away from the cart while it was stopped, and Prabhupada was, in ecstasy. And then she just turned around and noticed that she was in a better position because of the slope of the land. And if she just zoomed in with her telescopic lens or whatever they call it, she could get a shot that she couldn't even get if she were on the cart by Chris's arrangement. So there is this famous shot. And so why did I put the shot first? It's because you don't know these personalities. Maybe some old timers in the audience might know, but I mean, you know, maybe you recognize some from photos, but these are very strong-minded individuals, and they wouldn't necessarily, wouldn't necessarily get along themselves or cooperate themselves to do anything, but because they're all trying to please Prabhupada, it's all working here. So you see, I recognize temple presidents and GVCs and sannyasis, and yeah, they're all just, Prabhupada's the center, the common focus, and that is the theme. To love is to cooperate. So how to restore or keep that common focus is the subject of this lesson. 1974 Ratha Yatra, I could have kicked myself. I had just been in Chicago, where there was it was the first Ratha Yatra in Chicago. This is San Francisco, but I was in Chicago just before this. And we were on traveling Sankirtan up from Florida. And so we discussed amongst ourselves, okay, should we, because we were in such ecstasy from the 74 Ratha Yatra in Chicago, the first one, and the first time a pure devotee had been in the West, in Chicago since 1893. It was the first one, period, but the first the first appearance of a Vaishnav since the World Parliament of Religions had sent Vivekananda to Chicago in 1893 to represent so-called Hinduism. And of course, he was preaching Mayavad, Daridra Narayan, you're all God. And Vivekananda infuriated the Western clerics, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, because he was preaching we're all God. So that was Mayavad. And so that was the West's first impression of Vedic religion, that it was impersonalism, that they say you're all God. So 81 years later, in 1974, Srila Prabhupada, a pure devotee of the Lord, set the record straight when he gave his talk at Civic Center in Chicago. That's another pastime. Okay, so all right, we'll get right into the talk now. You mean here or in Chicago? This is San Francisco. Yes. Oh, you mean why they denied her permission? Yeah, it's like that. Practically anything connected with Prabhupada. As time passes, we see more and more, you know, the enormity of his contribution, the singular, what he did, nobody else ever did. And it's like, whoa, he's not just a guru, he's a super guru. Okay, so now, by May 1977, Srila Prabhupada's health had been declining for months. It was time to return to Vrindavan, India, his quote, home, as he called it, to recover or to depart. When his secretary, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, suggested he make a will, Prabhupada agreed. For 7 years, Srila Prabhupada had been training the members of ISKCON's governing body commission, GBC, to manage the society after his departure. To help them feel the gravity of that responsibility, Prabhupada requested that all the GBCs come to Vrindavan to witness the will. Yeah, now that was a big thing because during the conversation, this is 77. Oh, this, excuse me. 77 in Vrindavan in May. If you know the history, Prabhupada, you've probably seen the pictures of Prabhupada and Rishikesh in May on the boat, looking very thin and, you know, grave. And they went there, you know, Bhakti True Maharaj was there and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and they were trying to help one last ditch attempt to see if they could turn Prabhupada's health around with some pure water and air and just peace. But that didn't work. So Prabhupada said, all right, it's time to go to Vrindavan. And so they were shocked when Prabhupada said why he was going back to Vrindavan, because Prabhupada was saying, okay, well, this is the end, then I have to go to Vrindavan. To be born in Vrindavan is good, to live there is better, to die there is best, Prabhupada told us. So they were very sad to hear Prabhupada say that. And when they got back to Vrindavan on May 17th of 77, the devotees were ecstatic to see Prabhupada, but they were shocked because they hadn't seen him physically in a while, and to see Prabhupada's emaciated body. And then when Prabhupada said he's come here, you know, to spend his last days, their ecstasy turned into agony. They thought, oh no, we can't take this, you know. Anyway, so Tamal said, so are you sure you want all the GBC to come to witness the signing of the will? And Prabhupada said, yes. Hare Krishna. Because Prabhupada wanted them to not only theoretically experience the changing of the guard, so to speak. Prabhupada is now passing on the management officially to them That's the first line of the will. The governing body commission shall be the ultimate managing authority of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That's when Prabhupada officially, legally did that. He's been training them for 7 years, but now he's officially passing it on. So he wants them to be there to feel the gravity of that moment. Okay. So Tamal said, are you sure that you want them all to come? This can be very expensive. They all fly in. And of course, you know, human nature is when the cat's away, the mice will play. The service is going to suffer wherever they leave because people will just slack off. And yes, they must come. So then Tamal said, oh, I'm sure they'll come. Quote, because they love you. I'm sure they will all want to come and be with you. Prabhupada's reply was grave. Slide. All right. Dr. Kaylee. Famous quote. Most people know this quote. You didn't necessarily know the context. He's just been prompted by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Oh, they'll come. They love you. They want to be with you. And Prabhupada was very grave. Oh, yeah? Well, let's see how much you love me after I'm gone. Are you going to cooperate? Because I'm sure he had the Gaudiya Math in mind. What happened there? Notwithstanding Prabhupada's request, cooperation can be elusive, hard to find in our age of quarrel. To see why, as well as what we can do to foster cooperation, we will sample Prabhupada's words on the subject, which reveal a simple yet challenging dialectic. A dialectic is a fancy name for a line of reasoning. Like, for example, the most common dialectic from Socrates, the Socratic dialectic is, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Point, counterpoint, synthesis, or point, counterpoint, resolution, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So Prabhupada's thesis for us is cooperate. That's his point. Cooperate. Despite Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's order that his leading disciples, quote, work conjointly, unquote, and, quote, without any quarrel, unquote, after his demise, those are quotes directly from Siddhanta Saraswati's, the last 24, 48 hours of his life. There was somebody there taking notes. There was no tape recorder, but there's a whole, like a summary of what Siddhanta Saraswati said to his disciples in his last hours. That's what he was saying. So despite him being very explicit of what he wanted, he didn't want anybody to replace him. He wanted them to form a GBC, right? But they didn't do it. Their non-cooperation fragmented the Gaudiya mission and later disqualified most of them from helping Prabhupada revive it in the West. Determined that non-cooperation not similarly spoil ISKCON, Prabhupada often defined and tested his disciples' devotion in terms of their willingness to work together. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of quotes. Prabhupada was always, he didn't just say this at the end of his life, cooperate. It wasn't like a farewell thing out of the blue. He was always talking about how you have to cooperate. Because in his experience, that was the thing that they didn't do in the Gaudiya Math, did not do. So in, let's see. Yeah. So this is an early one, 68. Quote, when you do something in cooperation with the Lord, that is called bhakti. Prabhupada defined bhakti as cooperating to serve the Lord. It's done together. It's not done in isolation. And I hear this is 1973. Quote, the test of our actual dedication and sincerity. This is a letter to my godbrother Babru. The test of our actual dedication and sincerity to serve the spiritual master will be in this mutual cooperative spirit to push on this movement and not make factions and deviate. That's the tendency for everything to disintegrate into people's selfish little cliques. So that was 1973. And then in 77, you have these famous quotes. Now here's another one. Here's another quote that's very similar to that first one. That's similar to this. This is on May 17th. And then after Prabhupada signed the will in June, the day he signed his will, Prabhupada echoed his previous observation about cooperation. Slide. All right, very similar. Gorgadadhar Prabhu, you want to read that? No, just read it. Read that. Read what's on the screen. Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada emphasized, your love for me will be tested. How after my departure, you maintain this institution. We have glamour and people are feeling our weight. This should be maintained.
So it's he didn't actually say the word cooperate here, but it's the same idea. And what does he mean? We have glamour. Does that mean we're Bollywood? And because they know us, what do we have? Prestige. We have a good name. Yeah, good image, good people are feeling our weight. This should be maintained. In other words, don't spoil it by doing something scandalous like the Gaudiya Math. They went to court fighting each other. This should be maintained. Yeah. Have you seen? Yeah, it's right in the database too. TKG's diary. Have you seen this? So that's a thin volume. It's his diary. It's a funny story of how that came to be. So, Hari Shari Prabhu, it's very soon after he joined Prabhupada's party in November 75, he started keeping notes. He started keeping a little journal. And then very quickly he realized, this is like, I mean, I'm privy, I'm in a position here to hear everything Prabhupada's saying, but this is bigger than me. I've got to, publish this someday. So he started, the more the diary went on, November 75 to March 77, he realized this is for all the devotees. They've got to get this, this inside look at Prabhupada that most of them don't have. Most people, just like me, I just saw Prabhupada in a very public founder acharya kind of situation. But what's Prabhupada like, in his own room? What's it like living with him? So he was but when Hari Shari, as I told you, approached Prabhupada about how he felt himself getting too familiar, he didn't want to commit offenses, and he thought he should change his service, and Prabhupada liked that. And then they were trying to figure out who would come on as the servant. And then they hit on Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And then as Tamal Krishna Maharaj was coming in, before Hari Shari left, he said to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, oh, and one other thing, because he was training him up how to do this and that, and cooking and massage and all this. So he said, and one other thing, I've been keeping a diary for the last year and a half. Now you've got to continue this, especially right now when Prabhupada's health is more fragile than ever. We don't know how much longer, he has to live. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj's immediate reaction, oh, I'll be too busy for that. Forget it. I can't do that, And then Hari Shari begged him, no, you've got to do it. This is for posterity. This isn't just for, you got to perform this sacrifice just so everybody can get this. And then, so he gave something for Tamal Krishna Maharaj to think about. And then a couple of weeks later, he said, okay, I think you're right. I think I should do this. And then Hari Shari said, so, and then you're going to publish it, right? And then Tamal said, oh no, this is going to be very private. I'm going to say things that I wouldn't want everybody to hear. It's just between me and Prabhupada. And Hari Shari said, no, this is the point. You're keeping a diary, not just for you, it's for everybody. And so then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said something very clever. He said, okay, you kept your diary and you said you're going to publish. I will publish mine when you after you publish yours. Let me see, let you go first. Because you're going to be saying a lot of things, right? That are confidential and maybe you won't always feel comfortable publishing. You knew. But so you're being very bold about this. So let's see if you do it. Now, luckily, because TKG, he passed down in 2002, right? And by 2002, Harishari Prabhu had not published anything of his diary. But luckily in the 90s, Tamal Krishna Maharaj decided it was time, because he was returning to the academy and he was studying and he was, going to be more qualified to preach. And also his idea was to help ISKCON education. So he started compiling his notes in a more organized fashion. He did publish a couple of books, Srila Prabhupada's Last Days, Prabhupada's Antya Leela, it's called. And then also his diary, TKG's diary. It's right in the database under biographies and glorification of Srila Prabhupada. So, so that's how we have this quote. Otherwise, if he didn't publish his diary, we wouldn't have had this. That was the same. That was, the 17th. Yeah, go one slide back and see if I gave the date. Oh, that's from the Lilamrita. Yeah, this is funny. This is what Tamal Krishna Maharaj told Satyrup Maharaj, he said during that conversation. Prabhupada saying that he said to Prabhupada, oh, I'm sure they'll come, Prabhupada. This is all in the Lilamrita. And then, but later when he did his diary, sometime later, he said there was another quote. So he told both quotes, one in his diary and one to Satyrup Maharaj for like a memory for Satyrup Maharaj to consider to put in the Lilamrita. But they're very similar. So you see how Prabhupada was so focused on us cooperating. Okay, so that's the thesis, cooperate, that's the point. Now what's the counterpoint? What's the antithesis? Okay, so the next section is antithesis. Don't expect utopia. Who can give us a succinct definition of utopia? I bet Raj can. Yeah. Yes, a perfect place. It comes from Plato. Actually, we talked about who was really into the ideal world, the world of ideal forms, and there was a book in the 1500s in English by Sir Thomas More called Utopia. And the thing about utopia is utopos. No, it means literally no place. So there's actually no place where everything's perfect in the material world. There's no utopia. So therefore, Prabhupada's antithesis is, he says his thesis is cooperate, but the challenge is, the pushback, the counterpoint is, now don't expect utopia. Don't expect that, spiritual life and the spiritual society is going to mean everybody's always smiling and getting along. And no, that's not the way it works. A couple of years after Prabhupada had formed the GBC, this is 1972 now, one of its members wrote to complain that impersonal dealings were dividing his colleagues. That's what the complainer said in the letter. So devotees are treating yourselves, my colleagues on the GBC, they're always fighting because they're treating each other so impersonally. Prabhupada disagreed. Here's a letter from Prabhupada. It's a famous letter to my godbrother Atreya Rishi Prabhu, personality from Iran, Tehran. Quote, it is not so much that there may be some fault in our godbrothers and godsisters, or because there may be some mismanagement or lack of cooperation, that this is due to being impersonalists? No. It's the nature of the living condition to always have some fault. So it's kind of an eye-opener here, because Prabhupada's saying, just because people are alive, there's going to be, differences, individuals. And then I write, even in spiritual life, we may wonder, what? I thought I was taking up spiritual lives because everything's going to be nice. Then Prabhupada continues in his letter to Atreya, quote, even in the spiritual world, there is some fault and envy. Srila Prabhupada continued. Now then that really piques your interest, right? What? I thought I was going to get away from all that fighting and envy. And then Prabhupada continues, quote, but it is not the same as material fault or material envy. It is transcendental because it is all based on Krishna. And then Prabhupada gives an example. Sometimes when one devotee would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, oh, she has done so nicely. Now, let me do better for pleasing Krishna. And Prabhupada says, that's envy, but it is transcendental, without malice. Hari Priya, do you know what malice is? Okay, that's an honest answer. You are Brahmani. You're honest. Do you know what malice is? Yes, ill will. When you're not wishing the other well, you're wishing the other ill. Yeah. So there's envy in the spiritual world. It's like if somebody does something nice in the material world, the natural thing is people get jealous and they somehow want to, tear that person down or minimize the contribution of that person. But in the spiritual world, if somebody does something nice for Krishna, then the transcendental envious response is, oh, she has done so nice. Now let me do something better. So there's always a competition. It's an upward spiral of pleasing Krishna. And it just gets better and better and better. Not like the material world where the malice seeks to tear everybody down. Yeah, just the opposite. So envy without malice. How wonderful. Slide. Okay. Yeah, it's not right. And we're gonna churn this a little more. You're right. In fact, look at this. Before we get into the words, look at what I put up there for the images. There's on the top. Prabhupada's, with his pointer finger making a point. And then what's on the bottom? Hari Priya, do you know what's going on the bottom? Where is Akrura trying to take Krishna Balaram? Where? Right, he's taking them from where? Right. But and Akrura is a pure devotee of the Lord. Now you can imagine how awkward this is. Akrura is a pure devotee of the Lord, but his role in this Leela is that he's been sent by Kamsa to go to Vrindavan to take Krishna and Balaram out of Vrindavan, Hare Krishna, to bring him to Mathura, because Kamsa wants to kill him. Finally, he wants to finish off these guys. They're killing all his demons, and he doesn't like it, and he's the biggest demon. So Akrura is playing the part of their chariot driver. He's a pure devotee. But look, there's other pure devotees there, and they're in big conflict here. So the pure devotees, I thought they all get along. I mean, they're pure devotees. But no, you can see the gopis, it's like, over my dead body, you're not taking the Krishna Balaram out of here. Forget it. So it's transcendental conflict here. Yeah. Pure. What did you think I said? Pure? Oh. Yeah, well, actually, there's no, the gopis are peerless. There's no pure devotees like the gopis. But by Krishna's will, Akrura was able to get past them and take Krishna Balaram to Vrindavan. And you can imagine how distraught they were. Some may have even left their body. I don't know. I haven't looked at the particulars of the Leela in the 10th canto, but they might have, like this morning, we're reading about people, gopis being prevented from going, or Krishna leaving, and they couldn't take it. And anyway, they're pure devotees. They're all pure devotees in the general sense. But they're in conflict here. And that's part of the beauty of the spiritual world. There's intrigue, there's drama, there's tension. It's not just smiling on atop clouds. It's not this bland, one-dimensional picture of heaven that you might get from other people, but it's full of intrigue. And all the intrigue and the drama here is just a distorted reflection of the original pure intrigue of trying to please Krishna. Okay. So quote, this is continuing the letter. So I read that part. Okay, click one more. Okay. So, yeah, wait a minute. I think I've goofed here. All right. Okay, did I read this? People should not expect that even in the Krishna consciousness society, there will be utopia. Because devotees are persons, therefore there will always be some lacking. But the difference is that their lackings have become transcendental because despite everything they may do, their topmost intention is to serve Krishna. All right. So Atreya Rishi, he was saying negatively that they're treating each other impersonally, and that's why there's fighting. And so he's being very negative. And then I say, like a martial arts master using an opponent's negative energy to his advantage, Prabhupada then finished his point, challenging his disciple to see the positive. So this is how Prabhupada ends the letter to Atreya. It's quite an eye-opener. Quote, the devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that. And like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar or the best qualities of a person. So he's challenging Atreya, look, don't see the devotees like that they're impersonalists, that's why they're always fighting. No, see that even the least of them, better than kings, all of them. And then Prabhupada says, not like the utopians, and he's kind of indirectly implying that maybe that's what Atreya was looking for, some kind of utopia where everybody's always smiling and getting along. Not like the utopians who are like the flies, who always go to the open sores or find the faults in a person. When you got a little cut in your ankle, that's where the fly goes, right? He's not like the bee going for the honey, he's going for the sore. And because they cannot find any utopia, or because they cannot find anyone without faults, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So if there are sometimes, listen to how he ends this. So if there are sometimes slight disagreements between devotees, and sometimes they weren't slight, there were intense disagreements. Prabhupada says slight disagreements. See it like that. It is not due to impersonalism, but it is because they are persons. And such disagreements should not be taken very seriously. Yeah. All right. So if Prabhupada's thesis is to cooperate and his antithesis not to expect utopia, then what is his synthesis, his resolution? How do you resolve this? As we might expect, it's easier said than done, as the saying goes. So the synthesis is, as Prabhupada would say, find unity in what? Diversity. All right. So when another GB said that was in February 72. Now, in October 73, another GBC man wrote Prabhupada in a similar mood, kind of snitching on his godbrothers. Well, not really snitching. He was just informing Prabhupada that there was dissension among the ranks. When another GBC man wrote to inform Prabhupada of more dissension in the ranks, Prabhupada's response was philosophical and proactive. Quote, material nature means dissension and disagreement. But for this Krishna consciousness movement, its success will depend on agreement. Even though there are varieties of engagements, and Prabhupada explains, in the material world there are varieties, but there is no agreement. In the spiritual world there are varieties, but there is agreement. And you'll see how that works in a second. In other words, since individuals have different ways of performing devotional service, the agreement that harmonizes, quote, the varieties of engagements is their shared purpose to please Lord Krishna. Slide. Okay, I goofed. I spent a lot of time today trying to realign my script with the slides, and I still didn't get this one right. But anyway, one more. Go ahead. Okay, find unity in diversity. To illustrate, okay. Quote, this is more in that letter. The materialist cannot come into agreement with varieties, but if we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in varieties. This is called unity in diversity. I want to click, I think, yeah, that's it. I should have. All right. To illustrate, Prabhupada would sometimes give the example of concentric circles. No matter how many circles we draw, if they all share the same center, they never clash. Right? Did you ever go to a pond and try to skip rocks or throw rocks in the pond? And if you're really a good shot, you can throw the stone and you'll see where, say you throw a stone and the first one goes bloop, and then the circles ripple out from there. And if you're really good, you can throw another stone and hit the bullseye, hit the target, and those circles won't clash because they'll all have the same center. But if you throw a stone here and there, all those circles, they'll all bump up against each other. So, to illustrate, Prabhupada would sometimes give the example of concentric circles. No matter how many circles we draw, if they all share the same center, they never clash. In the same way, even when differences arise, if pleasing Krishna is our shared intention, we'll at least be able to, quote, agree to disagree and continue working cooperatively to serve the Lord. Prabhupada knew this would be an ongoing challenge. So because we're individuals, we're all going to have different opinions and different perspectives. We're going to see things differently. But if we respect each other's intentions, devotional intentions, then even when we disagree, we'll be able to work together, cooperate. Slide? Or word? Yeah. Okay, there you go. Okay, how about Mataji? You want to read? Right. That's that's how Prabhupada ends his letter to Kirtanananda Maharaj in October 73. In other words, Prabhupada saw this as such a challenge that he's saying that every year when you meet in Mayapur, make this the theme of the festival, because Prabhupada knew the differences and the tensions and the divisiveness would crop up during the year. So let's resolve it in Mayapur, face to face, where it's harder to demonize the other when you're actually right there and you're seeing them as people and not just, some theoretical opponents, right? Okay. What's going on?
Yes, too.
The meetings? Well, for the past few years, they've been online because of COVID. But we're all eager to meet again in Mayapur. And they'll probably have a hybrid form. Some won't be able to go because of health challenges, or maybe just they don't have the money to go, because it's no small thing to go to Mayapur, especially with today's airplane rates. But they're going to have some part of it in person, and they're going to Zoom it too. So, but yeah, we're looking forward to getting back to face. Okay, so a hint to how to do this, unity and diversity. So the next section is called unity around, okay, I gotta change this. Right? I put unity, is supposed to say unify. Unify around principles, diversify the details. That's the next heading. Since achieving unity and diversity is the key to cooperation, Prabhupada's measure of our love for him, we need to dig deeper to understand how to find this unity and diversity. However diverse we may be, if we trust our mutual intentions to please Guru and Krishna, we'll be able to work together to identify timeless, universal principles whose details will vary according to, quote, country, time, and candidate. Prabhupada explained. That's a phrase Prabhupada used a lot. Country, time, and candidate. Sometimes in a different order, but we say time, place, and circumstance too. Prabhupada explains. Slide. All right. Let's see. How about Hari Priya? Can you read that, Hari Priya? Read the heading first. This is from a purport, by the way. Go ahead.
The teacher, Chaya has to consider time, candidate and country. What is possible in one country may not be possible in another. The Acharya's duty is to accept the essence of personal service.
All right, and oops. Next. Yeah, this is a continuation. Go ahead, Haripriya.
And those who draw very what is required is special technique according to country, time, and candidate.
Does this sound familiar? Practically, most of our disagreements in ISKCON are about this very issue, because we all know certain principles, general principles Prabhupada made, but we don't agree necessarily how to apply them. And you have to apply them according to the time, the country, and the candidate. Of course, even if the Acharya's, quote, special technique proves effective for spreading Krishna consciousness, advanced devotees may still agree or disagree about its application. Now, here's an example. This is a famous example that came up in Prabhupada's time. For example, while receiving a massage from his assistant one day, Prabhupada remarked, and it's Shruta Kirti, he was the servant massaging Prabhupada, quote, "My godbrothers criticize me that I have allowed women to live in our temples. This is not done in India, but I have become successful because I made this adjustment." All right. Slide. All right. So, Hare Krishna. Yay. I think I'll read this. One of my favorites. In the silence that follows. So Shruta Kirti said he was massaging Prabhupada, right? And he couldn't see Prabhupada's expression because he was behind Prabhupada. He was massaging Prabhupada's back and head and from behind. So he felt like, he was deprived of seeing Prabhupada's facial. In the silence that followed, his assistant, Shruta Kirti Prabhu, felt compelled to ask, "Prabhupada, how can we tell the difference between making an adjustment and changing a principle?" That's the $64 million question, right? Whoa, that's what most of our disagreements are about. Prabhu, you can't do that. You're changing a principle. No, come on, don't be fanatic. That's just a detail. So it's no small thing to know the difference between a principle and a detail. Okay, so Shruti asked this, and then Prabhupada didn't answer right away. He was making sounds like, you know, if you ever hear on recordings, Prabhupada goes, So, yeah. All right, slide. As the tension mounts. All right, Gorgadadhar Prabhu. Prabhupada, read.
Continue to rub his body. Finally, he opened his eyes and responded. That requires a little intelligence.
That is the understatement of the Yuga. A little intelligence? Prabhupada's own godbrothers didn't get it. That Prabhupada had become successful because he allowed men and women to serve together in the same temples. That wasn't a free-for-all. Prabhupada gave us etiquettes. It wasn't that anything goes. But he knew that since the time we're toddlers in the West, we're freely mixing. That's just the way it is. So Prabhupada tried to tell his godbrothers, this is like 7 months earlier when they had the groundbreaking for Mayapur in March, that, you know, when I came to this country, I saw how they're just freely mixing all that. I mean, since they're babies practically, you can't change a culture overnight. And anyway, what is he supposed to do? Deprive half the human race, you know, all the females in the world, mercy, access to his lotus feet, to devotional service? No. So he allowed them within certain boundaries of etiquette to serve together. And he knew he was taking a risk because scandals had already happened. Scandals were happening. Scandals would happen. But he wasn't going to stop giving everybody access to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Prabhupada told us, for all their complaints, they have, and all their sticking to some, you know, old principles, they haven't advanced Mahaprabhu's movement 1 inch. They don't know how to adjust. They don't know a higher principle from a lower principle. They don't know how a principle from a detail. But Prabhupada was empowered to know that, how to do that. So, yeah. And it goes on today. You know, this whole thing with Vaishnavi Diksha gurus, India can't even conceive of it, or at least some people. And the West, the devotees are saying, hey, come on. In the West, if you don't allow ladies, qualified ladies, to that seva, serve in that capacity, you're not going to attract any intelligent women, because they're going to see that you say you're not this body, but also when it comes to this service, they can't do that service of being a spiritual master. You guys are retarded. You're backwards. We're not having anything to do with you. Whereas in India in Prabhupada's time, that didn't even come up. Nobody even asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, could a woman be a temple president? Could a woman be a guru? They didn't ask because of the tradition in India. It came up in the West big time. And Prabhupada said point blank, yes, if she's qualified. He gave an example to Professor Joe O'Connell, who was a Gaudiya Vaishnava scholar in Toronto, and whose wife was also a professor at UT, University. Their UT is University of Toronto. And so Prabhupada said in the conversation, you can look this up. It's June 18th, 1976. Prabhupada's talking with professors. And he said, just like your wife, she's a professor because she's qualified. She knows what she's talking about. She knows how to teach. So was she denied her tenure or her job because she was a lady? No. Because she's a qualified teacher. So that's what Prabhupada was asked point blank. He said, similarly, if somebody's qualified, then they can be guru. They can be a leader. They can be temple president. Well, sure. I mean, but that's you know, that's a traditional female role. But Prabhupada, in the line of Mahaprabhu, was taking tradition and often turning it on its head. Because in the old Indian system, generally women don't have leadership roles, although they are leaders as mothers. Sure, that's the most important job. Like on Sankirtan, I would say to people, to a lady, "So what do you do, ma'am?" "Oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom." "What do you mean just to stay home? That's the most important job in the world. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. You're the first guru. You're giving the child his mother tongue." Yeah. There are examples. Prabhupada told Professor O'Connell. Yeah, some, not many, because usually ladies don't take those roles. But if somebody's qualified, and certainly, especially nowadays, in the West, it's stifling the preaching. When one section of the world says, no, if we have Vaishnavi Diksha Gurus, then we're leaving ISKCON. We're going to have our own GBs. We're not, it's just childish. If I don't get my way, I'm leaving. That's childish. If I don't win this election, then the election is bogus. Same mentality. It's childish. So that requires a little intelligence, how to know a principle from a detail. But that's really an understatement, because even Prabhupada's own godbrothers, who were millions of times, more advanced in one sense than we were, because they knew culture and they knew how to behave and they knew Shastra. And we were just like, recovering hippies, but we were following Prabhupada. So that requires a little intelligence. We're going to take a little more look at this. Oh, it's right here. Okay, here, listen to this. So Prabhupada said that in October 72. A couple of years later, when he's writing his commentary to the CC, Prabhupada addresses this in a purport, exactly his godbrother's objection. In his commentary to Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 7, text 37, Prabhupada describes the compassionate intent of such intelligence. So it's not, it's not just intelligence well, there's no boundaries. There's a boundary, and there's boundaries in terms of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Quote, this is a quote from the purport. An acharya should devise a means by which people may somehow or other come to Krishna consciousness. First, they should become Krishna conscious, and all the prescribed rules and regulations may later gradually be introduced. I think I did quote this before when they were coming to Swamiji in 26 Second Avenue. Prabhupada's following Rupa Goswami. He didn't tell them that, but he was following, Lord Chaitanya's principal disciples, the Goswamis. Rupa Goswami said, Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet sarvhe vidinishedha syure tayoreva kinkaraha. Somehow or other, people should become Krishna conscious. That's the first thing. And how did Prabhupada do that? Through kirtan and prasad and a little philosophy, but mainly he was addicting them to Krishna prasadam and giving them a higher taste through sound vibration, through the pure vibration of the holy name. And then Rupa says, all the rules and regulations, sarve vidhi, all those rules, those do's and don'ts in the Shastra should be maidservants of this highest principle that get people to be Krishna conscious. So that's what Prabhupada was doing. He was finding the ways and means of how to do that. For instance, in Srila Bhakti, and this is one example of how Prabhupada did that. For instance, in Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's Gaudiya mission, many devotees used to chant 64 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra on their beads. You know who did that? I thought it was everybody in the Gaudiya mission, but I learned recently through Hari Shauri and his talks with Prabhupada how that worked. It was only people who were back at the mutt, who weren't going out to preach, who had more time. Their purification was they would chant more rounds. The people who were going out preaching and facing the public and just trying to distribute literature, their quota was 16. And householders who, like Prabhupada, who was raising a family and working full time, they were required to do 16. And so Hari Shauri asked Prabhupada, how does Srila Prabhupada, in your busy life of being a householder and working and raising a family and practicing sadhana after you were initiated, you had that vow, right, to chant. How did you chant 16 rounds? How did you budget your time? Did you ever hear this? It's funny. It's fun. He said, he probably said, I did 4, 4, 4, 4. He'd get up and, after purifying, bathing and everything, he would say Gayatri, and then he'd immediately chant 4 rounds before anything. And then he said, and then before I would eat, later, before I take any meal, I would deny myself any food until I chanted 4 more rounds. So that's 8. Then he took his midday meal, the big one, when the sun is highest and the fire of digestion is highest, and he would chant 4 more before the midday meal. So that's 12. And then in the evening, when he'd take a light meal, before that he would chant 4. In this way, I chanted 16 rounds. But when Prabhupada introduced the idea of a quota of rounds, listen to this. For instance, okay, so Prabhupada said that many devotees used to chant 64 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra on their beads in the Gaudiya Math, in the Gaudiya mission. So, despite Prabhupada suggesting fewer rounds to his first followers, so this happened just on the eve of the first initiation when he was saying what initiation meant. You remember that whole pastime and then they were stringing their beads, and then Prabhupada told them that, in the Gaudiya Math, many used to chant 64, but I think you can do 32. And then the devotees were like, no, what? And then he said, all right, 25. And then they still looked perplexed. That would take forever, right? 25. Prabhupada then declared 16 rounds daily, the rock bottom minimum for his initiated disciples, people who are really committed, to the bhakti marg, bhakti process. Now, Prabhupada did that. And then a few years later, Brahmananda tells this in his book, Swamiji. When one of those early initiates, Brahmananda was among them, later asked Prabhupada why he had asked them to chant so many rounds, then reduce the number, Prabhupada replied that he was, quote, experimenting to see what the devotees could actually do. He was testing. To determine a principle's practical application, that's called the detail, the way you practically apply. The principle is chant Hare Krishna. The application is, okay, that'll vary. It says it's in Nectar Devotion. The principle is chanting, but the quota might vary from master to master. To determine a principle's practical application, Prabhupada would often try something out and then judge by the result. Palena parachiyate, Bengali saying. And if the result was good, then you know that your application was practical. It worked. And if it didn't work, then you knew it was to be rescinded, withdrawn. Sometimes Prabhupada would just, I experienced that personally in 2 different engagements I had. I was part of this, transcendental rock opera. You might have heard if you read Vyasaki's book, Radha Damodar Vilas. It's also in the Lamrita too. It was a show. It was a rock opera. That's what it was, transcendental rock opera. And then another initiative was the In God We Trust Party for Purified Leaders. So we had a political party in ISKCON at one time, running for office. And in both cases, Prabhupada let the devotees do those things. It came from the devotees. That musical initiative and that political initiative. And Prabhupada let them try it. And then when it got so it actually interfered with their Krishna consciousness, the basics, they were losing it. They were, I'll tell you the details maybe over prasadam, but it was pretty wild what happened. Then Prabhupada then he stopped it. He let it go on. You can hear he's bragging about, yes, we're running for mayor in Atlanta, and we're running for mayor in Gainesville, Florida, and we're running for Congress in DC and Arizona, and they're wearing, shaved head and flag. That's what he called the shikha, the flag, the tuft of hair, and kanti mala, the neck beads, and tilak. And we're preaching the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness. We're stressing character. That's what you should elect these people, because they have character. And they did have character, but then because we were too neophyte, we didn't know how to handle it. We got carried away. So Prabhupada stopped it. Not that there's anything wrong with being an entertainer or being a politician, but you have to be matured and how to handle those things so you can still maintain your spiritual life. Otherwise, as we saw with Gandhi, it'll get to you and maybe somebody will end your life. Judge by the result. Okay, so we're still trying to find unity and diversity as the key to cooperation. And the next section, slide. Yeah. Humility helps. At one point, while instructing Sanatana Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped to marvel at his humble disciple. Quote, "Since you possess Lord Krishna's potency," this is Mahaprabhu to Sanatan, "you certainly know these things," because this is Sanatan Shiksha, right? And CC. So this is the Sanatan, Lord Chaitanya instructing Sanatan Goswami. But Sanatan is so amazing himself that Lord Chaitanya just sort of stops and he pauses and he says, "Since you, Sanatan, possess Lord Krishna's potency, you certainly know these things. You know all these things that I'm telling you. However, it is the nature of a sadhu to inquire. Even if we think we know something, still we'd like to hear it confirmed from a higher authority, right? Although he knows these things, the sadhu inquires for the sake of strictness." Yeah, right. Now, that was a spoken word. Prabhupada actually didn't write a purport to the verses in Sanatan Shiksha where this happened, but he did speak about it. Prabhupada wrote no commentary to this text, but later spoke about it. This was in New York in 76. Quote, "A sadhu, a saintly person, although he knows everything, still he remains very humble and tries to confirm from the higher authorities. I think this is right. Is it not right? He knows it is all right, but still he waits for the higher authority to confirm it. Strict in remembering his absolute smallness. He's humble. He knows that a realized soul know that he's a spark and Chris is the unlimited fire, right? He knows he's not God. He doesn't have a big head. He's tiny. Strict in remembering his absolute smallness, strict in never presuming he knows everything. The humble devotee is always glad to hear deeper realizations from sincere devotees, whom he regards as his prabhus or masters. Because he trusts the devotee's intentions, they trust his, and everyone is happy to cooperate with him, even if they sometimes disagree. It's like when we're hearing a class or a talk. Actually, in one sense, the class has already been given just by the way the class giver behaves. If you know that somebody is really a good speaker, but in his personal life, he doesn't really practice what he preaches, you're not really inspired to hear from that person. But if on the other hand, if you know somebody who's maybe not such a good speaker, but you know that everything he says, he practices, he's so sincere, he's so pure-hearted, then the tendency is to hang on every word that person's saying because that person's speaking purely. There's no discrepancy between his words and his deeds. In the Mahabharata, the model of the humble hero is King Yudhisthira, and the arrogant fool, Duryodhana, King Duryodhana. Slide. In the Mahabharata, okay. When they were mere youths, their martial arts guru, Dronacharya, gave them each an assignment to test their character. To Yudhisthira he commanded, bring me someone less than you. And to Duryodhana, bring me someone more than you. Now, even as the assignments were being spoken by Drona, Duryodhana's mind was already complaining. Why did Yudhisthira receive the easy task? Find someone less than you. In other words, everybody he thinks is less than him, right? How will I ever find anyone greater than me? Because he told Duryodhana, find someone greater than you, right? So he's already complaining. He's already fulfilling his own prophecy, so to speak. Later that day, Duryodhana fulfilled his own prophecy by returning to his master alone. So the idea was you're not supposed to come back until you fulfill those assignments. But he came back, alone. I'm sorry, Guru Maharaj. I could not find anyone greater than me. Drona raised his eyebrows, but he kept silent. Didn't say anything. He said, all right, now I see who I'm dealing with here. Twilight came, and still no Yudhisthira. So Duryodhana came back early, but Yudhisthira, he was still trying to find somebody less than him, and he couldn't. Finally, at dusk, he returned, alone and disappointed. I'm sorry, Guru Maharaj. I looked high and I looked low. Finally, I saw a man with some grain on a codicy. It was a codicy. With some grain on a codicy. I thought he was going to eat it. But then he fed it to his animal. So I gave up. How will I ever find anyone less than me? Yudhisthira. Drona smiled, as we might too. But am I more like Yudhisthira or Duryodhana? Sanatan or Satan? If I think there is no one with whom I need to check my understanding, no authority higher than myself, then I need to give up the arrogance of Duryodhana and embrace the humility of Yudhisthira. Genuine humility enables us to appreciate and learn from all devotees and to cooperate with them to please Srila Prabhupada, Guru, and Krishna. Now we're going to give the last word to Prabhupada. And there's audio for this, but I didn't include it because there's an annoying buzz that distracts from Prabhupada's words. So it's actually better if we just read it off the screen. And I'll give you the context here. So more than a farewell request, Srila Prabhupada's desire that his followers cooperate to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere remains a perennial. You know what perennial means? Haripriya? Haripriya. Perennial. You ever heard that word, perennial? If something is happening annually, do you know what that means? Annual? It happens every year. But if something happens perennially, it happens every year. Anyway. So, all right. Annual means every year, once a year. But perennially means every year. I mean, well, I see what you mean, yeah. Yeah. So, or it's, yeah, I just confused you by making a contrast between annual and perennial. In other words, every year, Prabhupada said we should make this a theme in Mayapur, that we should discuss how to make unity and diversity. And practically, we need to think about that all the time. Now, here's, okay, slide. So there's Prabhupada. He's being fanned. There's a young Yadavar. There's behind him, there's Brahmananda Swami at the time. Looks like he's examining his fingernails. And there's, on the right, there's another sannyasi. By his profile, I know who that is. Pantra Dravida Maharaj, who's still active, but he's in another sangha. And way behind him, that's Paramhansa Maharaj. He was Judakirti's companion as they were serving Prabhupada together for a while. And there's a couple of Indian gentlemen. And Prabhupada's making a point with his hand. He knew how to use his hands to make points. And, okay. Yeah, that's Paramhansa Maharaj. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought this was, I mean, this didn't necessarily, because the quote that we're going to read now, this has actually happened in Prabhupada's quarters. This is on a morning walk. But the expression, the gesture that Prabhupada's making goes very well with the words. Okay. Ritu Mataji, you want to read the? Okay, just pause for a second. What, do you know when Lord Chaitanya was felt unable to do something? Do you know what that is all about? Yeah, he said, if I have all these fruits of love of God to distribute, and I can't do it alone. I need your help. So it's beautiful because he's God, but even he's saying that. So Prabhupada's making the point. So Ritu Mataji, you want to continue? So this is the position. It's a click. Keep reading. Yeah, we can only do it together. We can only go back to Godhead together. We don't, there's no prima donnas. You know what a prima donna is? Somebody who thinks they're all it. Yeah, we need each other. You know, we have our gurus, we have Prabhupada, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have each other. That's what we need to uplift each other day to day, you know, to go back to Godhead. We have to gently remind each other of why we're here, what we're doing. And so that's what we need to do. Cooperate, work together. Literally, cooperate means to work together. Transition. Before we look at different ways to access and develop a personal loving relationship with Srila Prabhupada, in lesson 9, we'll examine and clear up some misunderstandings about him. I call the lesson Fictional Prabhupada. It's my favorite fun, it's a different kind of lesson. Fictional, you know what fictional means, Hari Priya? Fiction. Yeah, that's pretty good. Not a fact. Like if somebody writes a novel, they just make it up. Right. Now that for it to be good, it'll have some relevance to the factual world, right? But yeah, let me just finish the point, then we'll take some questions. So in the next lesson, what we're going to do is, it's like an exorcism. We're going to identify impersonal and sentimental misconceptions about Prabhupada and then dismiss them with knowledge. We're going to give the fiction and then we're going to give the fact. So it's really kind of fun. Raj Prabhu has a question. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Prabhupada is saying Sankirtan is something we do together, especially he's talking about public, like the way that Lord Chaitanya introduced of becoming God realized in the Kali Yuga, Yogyai Sankirtana Prayaya, it says in Bhagavatam, is public sharing of Krishna's glories. So when we go out and sing and dance Hare Krishna in public, that's called Sankirtan. We do it together. Now Kirtan, it can also be together, but it's done. Well, look, when we have Kirtan after the class, maybe that's a Kirtan. It's a smaller, and then when you do something private for yourself, what's that called? Bhajan. I'm talking about singing now. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I know that struck me too when Prabhupada said that. Many men combined together chanting, that is Sankirtan. Otherwise, Kirtan. Yeah, it's smaller. Yeah, actually, that's true. Because we could just take it, literally that it's only when we sing and dance. The Prabhupada made it very clear that the Brihad Kirtan, the great Kirtan, is sharing wisdom. That's why he pushed book distribution. Because Prabhupada said, when you go outside and you're singing and dancing with mridanga and kartals, that vibration can only be heard, maybe within a block. But when you give someone a book, that might go all over the world. Who knows where they're, if you're in an airport or, or it might just sit on their shelf for years, but then sooner or later it'll fructify. Somebody will read it and, wow, this is truth. When we sit and sing, yeah, that's kirtan. Yeah, but when we're sharing with the public, that's sankirtan. Yeah. Yogyai sankirtana prayaya. Yajanti hi sumedasaha. Okay. Brihad or Brihad, depends if it's Bengali or Sanskrit. Brihad means great, the greater kirtan. BRHAD, R with a dot below, like Ritu, R with a dot below, right? But your name means season, right? Yeah, so RTU. Yeah, R with a dot, because R with a dot means ri. Or else I couldn't say urt. How could I say, So R with a dot means ri, like the RI and Rita. Oh, it's RH? If you want to say what? No, not RH, R with a dot below. It's re. Yeah, it's not, can't even say. Yeah. Yes.
Like sometimes we have seen definitely there are difference of opinion where like what we talk about the society, like even within the family.
Sure. Two people. It's two people, there's a difference. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. What to do? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. You've got to manage it. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Correct them, right. Right. Right.
So how can we reconcile that?
Yeah.
If we don't do our duty, then we are we are running away from our perspective.
Right.
But if we do that,
Mm-hmm.
then we have to undergo the resentment.
Right. So Gorgadara Prabhu, for the listening audience, is pointing out the tension between not being a fault finder, like Prabhupada said, don't be like the fly who goes for the sores, right? And be like the bee who just goes for the good things and go for the honey. But what if your service is to correct and to, in a sense, find the fault? But it's not. Yeah, it depends on the spirit of it. The manager or the corrector, the parent or the team leader or the whoever it is, the supervisor, can correct the people who are under him as much as they know that he has their best interest at heart. He's not just simply doing it to lord it over them or fault find or be a jerk. Right? Mhm.
Feeling of other person, whether junior or senior. So we don't respect the other's feelings.
Yes,
Mhm. And,
or parent or anything. Yes. Yes. Right. Or spiritual master. Prabhupada said a spiritual master doesn't feel himself a spiritual master. He feels himself the servant of his disciples, not the master of them, not possessive. Right, like that. Gopal Krishna Maharaj.
Already?
Get a big smile on his face. So now itself you stopped. Now
Already? Like, universe will drive it out and we can see like that.
Mm. That's purity. Purity is the force. Yeah.
The leader won't be able to control it.
Right. And you can tell when someone's coming at you from a position of love or care or concern, or a position of false ego and lording it over.
I don't know whether I'm like, but my attitude is somebody's really close to me, and I know they're going over the cliff.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, I will stop it. But if there's somebody who, like an acquaintance or at my work or
Yeah.
or on my team, and if they are there to make a mistake, I'll let them learn from their mistake. I will.
As long as it doesn't hurt the team, as long as it doesn't hurt the team. But if it's going to protect the team, you're going to step in.
That case, but if it's not
Right.
something,
Sometimes you'll have to let people make their own mistake. Right.
and that's my devil act.
Yeah.
Everybody.
That's a fine line. And that's why it takes maturity to know when to do that. Yeah. I hear that every day. Yeah. Right. Hmm.
She's going out there. So that's her mind, like, maybe she will be able to get those kind of-
Harishari gives a nice example. He said when he first came on Prabhupada's service, he didn't know how to do anything. But Prabhupada knew that. So Prabhupada was tolerant. For example, the first time he gave Prabhupada a full body oil massage at midday. Now, this is one thing the previous servant forgot to tell him. While you're doing the oil massage, you should have the water heating up gradually with the bucket and the wand, the wand heater in the bucket, gradually getting warm. And you have to know what setting it's on. You have to know how to do it. So by the time Prabhupada says, all right, that's enough, then the water will be just the right temperature. Yeah, so Harishari he's trying to keep all these things in mind. And then he finished the massage and then he went to the bucket. He forgot to turn it on. So it was cold. But Prabhupada was okay with that. Prabhupada said, that's all right. It's your first time. The next day or the same thing happened the next day. Then Prabhupada got irritated. Now I expect you to learn from your mistake. So if somebody was sincere, then he would cut them some slack. But if they kept repeatedly making the mistake, that means there's something wrong there in his mentality. He's not being attentive enough. So it just takes practice, and Prabhupada would apply the pressure or not, depending on the situation. Yeah, Prabhupada could look at us in the most scolding way. Like he looked at me once in Dallas when he was just before he installed Radhakala Janji on the altar in September 12th, 1972. He was in the temple room and he was having a big fire sacrifice, initiations. And then he stopped everything because something wasn't right. And he and his leaders didn't know what he wanted. Shyam Sundar didn't know, Satsarup Maharaj didn't know, Prajumna didn't know. And then he started just looking at all of us. And then his head wheeled, it was right where Mataji is, I was sitting right about where Mataji is. And he looked at us like, do you know what I want? You know, he was sort of appealing to us. Then his glance fell on me. And I was such an idiot. I was so thrilled that Prabhupada was looking at me. Prabhupada looked at me really sternly and I just started grinning. Like a kid, you know, like, Prabhupada. And he was trying to, you know if I could help him. He wanted something. And then he saw that I was grinning, and then his face really got disgusted. He just looked at me like, you're an idiot. You know, that was the message. You could never know in a million years what I want. You're such an idiot. But he said it with such compassion. Even in the middle of that glance that was like hard as a thunderbolt glance, there was such compassion underneath it all that my response was, and I told this in the Vyas Puja offering once, my response, I got the message, you know, by his eyes, and my eyes back to him said, Jai, I'm an idiot. You love me, Srila Prabhupada, and I'm an idiot. Jai. It was like that with Prabhupada. He could be so hard, but still it was just what you needed to improve. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how to deal with those situations where we want to be humble?
Okay, well, humility has many manifestations. Just like after hearing the Gita, Arjuna said, Karishye vachanang tava, I'll do whatever you want me to do. So before hearing the Gita, Arjuna, his humility was false. I don't want to kill Bhishma, Drona, my father's uncles, grandfather, teachers, maternal, you know, all these friends and family. And you could say, oh, that's very nice, very nice. But after hearing the Gita, what did Arjuna do? He very humbly was mowing down the enemy like anything with his bows and arrows. That was his humility. He was surrendering to Krishna. He was on the order of Krishna. He was fighting. Sometimes humility means you fight. So it's you have to know how to be humble. You have to do your duty. It's hard sometimes to do the right thing because you know you're going to catch it. You have to get it back. It's like, in politics, like some of the guys lost. They said, yeah, I lost because I took a stand and I know it wasn't going to be popular, but it was the right thing to do. So I'm happy that I did that, and I'm happy to accept the results of the election, even though I lost. So you got to do the right thing. That's not always easy. That's humility, to do what's right. Okay. Yeah, but that's not, so a good leader knows that. Yeah, so humility doesn't mean you let yourself become a doormat for people to wipe their junk on you. That's not humility. That's foolishness. So sometimes you got to be strong and that's humility too. You got to be strong to do your duty, to do the right thing, to correct people. It's not easy.
But sometimes like they don't feel bad themselves after saying something, even if it's like, even if it's like we are saying like
If we're heavy and we say something to
something,
correct someone, but then
we don't like that. Maybe feel like that person.
It's not easy.
Just ignore that person.
Yeah, that's the easy way out. But if our duty is to correct them, if that's our, it's not that anybody can correct anybody. It depends on the relationship. You know, if I see some nonsense going on in the temple in Tucson, for example, but I know that the person doing that, I don't have a good relationship with that person, I will confide in somebody else who does have a good relationship with the person to tell the person. And then they might listen to that other person because the relationship is better. Whereas I know if I don't have a good relationship, they're just gonna dismiss me and say, you're just telling me that because you don't like me or something or whatever. So you got to be intelligent the way you apply all these things. Mhm.
they all love the Lord. Depends, it's just and how they interact with the other devotees.
Yeah, that's true. And the deities. Yeah. So, well, yeah, more or less. Yes. Right. Yeah, that's Kanishta. He only sees Krishna in the deity. He doesn't see Krishna in the heart of the devotees. What to speak of everybody else? The heart of everybody. It's just me and Krishna. That's very sectarian, very cripple-minded, very small-minded. And that's, yeah, that's why most religionists. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right. Who? Bhavna. Okay, I hear we have a question online. I'm on the headphones, so what's the question?
Hare Krishna, bro. So I have one question. Like, like some devotees doing seva of guru, like, but physically, like they.
Oh, hang on, Mataji. Should I just pull this and so everybody can hear? Oh, then I can't hear?
Hare Krishna.
Okay, hang on. Okay, we're gonna let you speak so everybody can hear. I'm gonna disconnect the. Okay, go ahead, Mataji.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, good, everybody.
Okay. Okay, so like some devotees doing seva of gurus personally, like physically, and some devotees are like far away from guru. So are those devotees are like more merciful than those who are like staying far away from guru? So how it look?
I'm not clear on the different kind of gurus you're talking about. Do you know? Personally, the guru, you mean physically? Okay. So what's the last part of it? Some are serving.
Some are like staying far away and they can't do seva, physically seva,
Yeah. Mhm.
So like they are more merciful who are doing physically seva. So are they more merciful?
Are they getting more mercy if they're doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Physical seva? No, frankly. And I'll give you a story. I'll tell you a story of how I learned that very hard lesson. I mean, it's kind of obvious that. Oh, okay. We're gonna plug it in. Or can you hear me, Mataji?
No, it's very like
Okay,
low.
anyway, yeah, let me just. Oh, hang on. Okay. Better, right?
Yeah, yes. Now I can.
Okay. Okay, I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada in February 1975 on Miami Beach. And there was just a few of us. It's cloudy, it was cold from Miami. And the pathway along the beach was so narrow because the sand was so steep and the ocean was coming up, lapping at our feet. So there was just a little narrow place to walk. So we were single file behind Prabhupada. And then someone would call out a question from behind Prabhupada, from the single file of devotees. And then to answer, Prabhupada would stop, plant his cane in the sand, and turn to answer. So we were all very, kind of, we were trying to get close to him physically, all of us in the group. So somehow in the jockeying for position to get close to Prabhupada, at one point when Prabhupada stopped to answer a question that someone had asked him, I stopped right in back of Prabhupada's head. Right in back of Prabhupada's head. I mean, I was so close. I was about, maybe a foot or 18 inches away from his head. But because I was so close to him physically, and because I was so neophyte, so, foolish, I didn't really hear the question. I didn't even hear what he said, but all I can think was, I'm right in back of Prabhupada's head. I was like a groupie at a rock concert, a rock and roll worshiper, idol worshiper. And I was just looking at his head, his Bengali head and the golden brown glow of his skin. And then I could see how the male patterned baldness had pushed his shikha, down to the back of his head, and a few silver hairs. And I was just thinking of his body. I couldn't even hear him. I was just so thrilled to be so close to his body. Right? And while I was thinking this, wow, I was thinking like this, Jagat Guru, Srila Prabhupada, I'm right in back of Jagat Guru. And then I got a very clear heart transmission. The Lord in the heart. It wasn't like a voice in the sky or skywriting or, an explosion or anything. It was just a very clear, it was so clear. It was Krishna's message to me. And the message was this: yes, you are right in back of Srila Prabhupada's head. But you, my friend, are nowhere near Srila Prabhupada. You're nowhere near him. You're a million years, light years away from him because you can't hear him. So those who are in Prabhupada's physical presence, say, for example, there was always only a few people. There was a secretary, there was a servant, there was a Sanskrit editor, there might have been a visiting GBC. So that was circumstantial. But Prabhupada, what was he doing at the time? Every day he was speaking, he was dictating his books, he was speaking to the whole, he insisted his words be recorded so that people for all time could hear his what he was saying later. So it's not a question of physical presence. Physical presence, and you can read this in Prabhupada's books, physical presence is temporary, but the vibration of the guru, that's called Vani, physical presence is called Vapu, the temporary body, it comes and goes. We only saw Prabhupada's body as an elderly man, for 12 years. And then it disappeared. That body disappeared. But then there was the written and spoken record of his words and recordings and books and so many things. So that's what we're all living on now. That's the real mercy. And I'll tell you one more thing, Mataji. My late great godbrother, Jamuna Devi, who was famous, who we hear every day singing the Govinda prayers when the curtains open and we greet the deities in our temples, and we hear this eminent voice singing Govindam Adi Purusham Tammahang Bhajami. So she told of an experience she had with Vani and Vapu, with her physical presence and the words, the instructions that we have to remember. She was with Prabhupada in a Kumbh Mela in Prayag in 1971. So she joined Prabhupada's movement in 1967. She was an early devotee of Prabhupada, and ever since she joined the temple at 518 Frederick Street in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco, she always sat front and center to hear Prabhupada's words. And then 4 years later, Prabhupada is taking many of his Western disciples to India to convince the Indians that if you want to imitate the West, imitate these Westerners. You know, they're becoming devotees. They've seen the whole thing of materialism. They don't want any part of it anymore. So then they were at Kumbh Mela and they had a good spot and they had enough room for several tents. The devotees stayed in tents. And so Jamuna said that, so there were different programs and then we'd all clean up after one program and go to the next. And so one morning, Prabhupada was in a big tent to address many people, many visitors. And before Prabhupada came out to speak to the crowd, Jamuna said, I was sitting like I always did in San Francisco. You know, I was sitting front and center, right in front of the podium where Prabhupada was going to speak. But then just before Prabhupada came out, a sannyasi said something to her. And first Jamuna said she heard, Jamuna. And then Jamuna looked around and it was a certain sannyasi and he said, you see where the Indian ladies are sitting? To the side and a little behind? You should sit with them. So Jamuna thought, huh? What's this? I always sit right, I don't want to miss a word. You know, Prabhupada's words are my life and soul. So she thought, well, let me see what this is all about. So she got up and she went around behind and she sat down with the Indian ladies, right? Prabhupada came out, gave a beautiful talk and roared answers to the questions, you know, Prabhupada is always roaring to the Indians, you know, don't give up your culture. This is, you know, don't even try to imitate the West. And then everybody applauded and then everybody bowed down and then everybody's setting up for the next thing. So Prabhupada had his own little tent and the tent was such that the structure came down to about maybe a foot above the ground and then there was just legs. So when Prabhupada was in the tent, he was chanting japa. And as the devotees were walking by, he could see the dhotis and saris walking by and he knew who was who. So when he saw Jamuna's sari, the bottom of Jamuna's sari, all of a sudden Jamuna said she was walking by the Prabhupada's tent and all of a sudden she heard, Jamna, Jamna. That's how he said Yamuna, the Bengali accent. And she stopped and then she went in, she said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, you want something? You need something? And then Prabhupada said, so you do not like to hear me anymore? That was too much for Jamuna. She just burst out crying. She couldn't, no. And then she told Prabhupada what happened. And then she said, Srila Prabhupada, what should I do? And then Prabhupada didn't say anything for a minute. And then he just looked down and he said, yes, this is India. It's different. It's not the Haight-Ashbury. It's not boys and girls together in the hippie, in the counterculture. And there's different etiquette here. There's more of a division, you know, between the men and the women. And then Jamuna sort of got that. She thought, okay, well, it's India. So how am I going to continue to stay close to Srila Prabhupada? So then she asked a question. She said, Prabhupada, how many times were you with your spiritual master physically? Prabhupada said, oh, maybe 5 or 6 times. But those were very intimate times. Guru Maharaj would always want he would want to confide something in me. And then one of the things that Bhaktisiddhanta confided in Abhay Charanaravindra was this. He said, Bhaktisiddhanta said, or Prabhupada said, Guru Maharaj told me that there were many leaders in his Gaudiya Math, and they always wanted to be seen with Bhaktisiddhanta physically, you know, photo ops, and just to be near the Guru close to him physically. And she said, Prabhupada told her, Guru Maharaj said they were like mosquitoes, simply sucking blood. So she got it. If I want to continue to come closer to Prabhupada, I've got to cultivate this mood of service and separation, and I've got to come closer to him in his vibration, in his Vani manifestation. That's forever, that vibration, even when the Guru is not there physically. And she got that. So when Prabhupada did disappear, she didn't fall apart. You know, like some who had all that close physical association, they couldn't take it anymore. Her own husband had a lot of that physical association. And when Gurudas Prabhu, and when I got to know him later, I said, it must have been hard for you, Gurudas. You were so close to Prabhupada in the early days in San Francisco, and you were always taking pictures of him. And then Prabhupada left, and as we know, the movement wasn't the same without Prabhupada's physical presence, although it was the same on a higher level, but it wasn't the same on a human level. So he said, yeah, I couldn't take it. So he was sort of out of the loop for 20 years. And it wasn't until the centennial in 1996 that he came back into the Association of Devotees. He was just too kind of heartbroken with his own issues but then he got it. He got it that he's associating more with Prabhupada through his vibration. So Mataji, I just want to say to you that if it's really important that, whoever our Guru Maharaj is, we all have the same founder Acharya, and we're all kind of orphans in one sense now because Prabhupada is not physically with us, right? But we have to get close to him by vibration. And that's how his mercy is available to everyone. So that's what we have to do. We have to cultivate that service and separation and aspire to meet him someday on the spiritual plane. Because when I got that heart message on that morning walk, and I was mortified that I had been such an idiot, that I was millions of miles away from Prabhupada, as the Lord in the Heart told me. But then in the next instant, I became ecstatic because I realized it's true. Vani, the vibration, is more important than the Vapu, the physical presence. And someday I can really meet Prabhupada on the spiritual platform. Whereas I was right next to him physically and I couldn't relate. I was too neophyte. So that gave me the strength to carry on when Prabhupada did leave us physically, as devastating as that was, individually and collectively for the movement. I knew the real opportunity for service and separation was increasing. It was like he left this world, but he entered all of our hearts. It wasn't just a few people who were with him physically. And then it was obvious that everybody had equal access to Prabhupada through his vibration. And that really strengthened the movement, as devastating as it was to lose him physically. So don't worry, Mataji. The only people who, if we want to be close to the Guru, then we have to associate with him through his instructions. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Or as Bhaktivinoda Thakur put on Haridas Thakur's tombstone in Puri, you can see it to this day. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnav dies to live, and living tries to spread the holy name around. Jai, great question, and I think...
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you for answering or asking. All right. Are we done? Okay. All right. Thank you. And please tune in tomorrow night for fictional Prabhupada. We do an exorcism. At 4:30, right? Yeah. 4:30 EST. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.